I stood in the middle of the crystal grand ballroom, wearing the emerald dress my husband had picked out for me that morning. Around me, champagne glasses clinked and diamond jewelry sparkled under the chandeliers. But I wasn't seeing any of that. I was watching my husband Derek walk out the main doors with his arm around another woman's waist. She was laughing at something he said, her hand resting on his chest like she owned him. He turned back one last time, caught my eye across the crowded room and smiled. Not a guilty smile. Not an apologetic smile. A triumphant smile. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out his car keys and tossed them across the room toward me. They landed at my feet with a metallic clink that somehow cut through all the party noise. "Find your own way home, Naomi," he called out, loud enough that people turned to stare. "I'm riding with a real woman tonight." The woman next to him, Veronica Ashford, tech millionaire, I'd learn later, threw her head back and laughed. They walked out together while I stood frozen, my face burning, my hands shaking, surrounded by 100 people who had just witnessed my public humiliation. Some looked away in embarrassment. Others whispered behind their hands. A few actually smirked, enjoying the drama. I bent down and picked up those keys. My fingers closed around the cold metal and something inside me shifted. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't chase after them. Instead I smiled. Because Derek had just made the biggest mistake of his life, and he had no idea what was coming. The evening had started like any other charity event Derek dragged me to. We got dressed up, put on our fake smiles, and pretended to care about whatever cause was being celebrated that night. This time it was something about funding arts programs for kids. The ticket cost $5,000 per person. Derek hadn't paid for it himself, of course. His mother had. Derek came from money. Old money. His grandfather had built a real estate empire, and his father had expanded it into hotels and commercial properties. When Derek and I got married 8 years ago, I thought I was lucky. He was handsome, charming, and came from a family that never worried about bills. I was a girl from the South Side who'd worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. Meeting Derek felt like a fairy tale. I should have known fairy tales aren't real. The first few years were good. Derek worked for the family business, or at least he showed up to the office. I worked as a financial analyst at a mid-size firm. We bought a nice house in a nice neighborhood. We talked about having kids someday. I thought we were building a life together. But slowly things changed. Derek stopped coming home for dinner. He took more business trips that seemed to have nothing to do with business. He spent money like water, buying expensive watches and taking golf trips with friends I'd never met. When I asked questions, he'd laugh and tell me not to worry about it. His family had money. We were fine. Tonight, getting ready for the gala, I'd actually felt hopeful. Derek had been attentive all week. He'd bought me this expensive dress and told me I'd be the most beautiful woman there. He'd kissed my forehead and said we should make more time for each other. I'd foolishly thought maybe we were getting back on track. I was so wrong. The gala was packed with rich people doing rich people things. I recognized several of Derek's family friends. His mother was there, holding court near the silent auction table. His younger brother and sister were somewhere in the crowd. Derek led me through the room, his hand on my lower back, introducing me to people whose names I'd forget in 5 minutes. Then we reached the bar and everything fell apart. She was standing there in a silver dress that probably cost more than my car. Veronica Ashford. I didn't know her name then. I just saw a tall, thin woman with perfectly styled hair and a smile that showed too many teeth. Derek's entire body language changed when he saw her. He straightened up, sucked in his stomach, and practically pulled away from me. "Veronica," he said, his voice higher than normal. "I didn't know you'd be here." She turned and looked at him with obvious interest. "Derek, it's been a while." Her eyes slid over to me, then back to him. "Is this your wife?" The way she said wife made it sound like a disease. "Yes, this is Naomi," Derek said, barely glancing at me. "Naomi, this is Veronica Ashford. She's a tech investor. Very successful." I reached out to shake her hand, but she'd already turned back to Derek. "I've been meaning to call you. I have a business opportunity that might interest your family." Derek lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Really? Tell me more." And just like that, I stopped existing. They talked and laughed while I stood there like a piece of furniture. I tried to join the conversation a few times, but they both ignored me. After 10 minutes of this, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. Neither of them noticed me leave. I took my time in the ladies' room, checking my makeup, trying to calm down. When I came back out, I saw them on the dance floor. Derek's hand was on her waist. Her head was tilted back, laughing at something he said. They looked like a couple. They looked like they belonged together. My stomach twisted, but I walked over to their table and sat down. I watched them dance through 2 songs. When they finally came back, both breathless and smiling, Derek looked at me like he'd forgotten I existed. "Oh, you're still here," he said. "Still here. At the event he'd brought me to. Wearing the dress he'd bought me." The rest of the night was torture. Derek and Veronica were inseparable. They got drinks together. They talked to other guests together. At one point, they disappeared onto the balcony for 20 minutes. When they came back, Derek's collar was crooked and Veronica's lipstick was smudged. I sat at our table, alone, watching my marriage end in real time. Around 11 o'clock, Derek came back to the table one last time. He was drunk. I could see it in his eyes, in the way he swayed slightly. "I'm leaving," he announced. "Okay," I said, standing up. "Let me get my purse." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Not with you. With Veronica. She's taking me to a private party at her place." He leaned in close and I could smell the whiskey on his breath. "She's worth $40 million, Naomi. 40 million. What are you worth?" I stared at him, unable to speak. "That's what I thought." He straightened up and pulled his car keys from his pocket. "Find your own way home. Take an Uber or something. I'm sure you can afford it with your little job." He tossed the keys at me. They hit my chest and fell to the floor. "Maybe I'll come home tomorrow. Maybe I won't. Don't wait up." He turned to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and Naomi? I want a divorce. I'm done pretending I'm happy with someone so ordinary." Then he was gone, walking across the ballroom to where Veronica waited by the door. She linked her arm through his and looked back at me with a smile that made my blood boil. They walked out together while everyone watched. I stood there for a long moment, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. Then I bent down, picked up those keys and walked out of that ballroom with my head high. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I got in Derek's precious sports car and drove myself home. But on the way I made a phone call. To someone Derek had forgotten about. Someone who was going to change everything. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I kept replaying the evening in my mind, seeing Derek's face as he tossed those keys at me. Hearing Veronica's laugh. Feeling the weight of 100 stares as I stood there humiliated. But mostly I thought about the phone call I'd made on the drive home. "Mrs. Patterson?" I'd said when she answered. "It's Naomi. I'm sorry to call so late, but I need to talk to you about the trust." Patricia Patterson was the family attorney. She'd handled Derek's father's estate when he died 3 years ago. She was the only one who knew the secret that was about to blow Derek's world apart. "Of course, dear," she'd said, her voice warm despite the late hour. "Is everything all right?" "No," I'd told her. "Everything is not all right. And I need to know exactly what powers I have as trustee." There was a pause. Then she said, "Can you come to my office first thing Monday morning? We should discuss this in person. I'll be there at 8. Now it was Saturday morning. I sat in the kitchen of the house Derek and I had shared for 6 years, drinking coffee and waiting. The house felt too big, too quiet. I'd always liked our home. It was a 4-bedroom colonial in a good neighborhood. Big backyard. Nice kitchen. The kind of place where you raise kids and have barbecues with neighbors. But Derek had bought it with family money. Just like he bought everything with family money. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek's mother, Claudia. "Naomi, we need to talk about Derek's behavior last night. Call me." I set the phone down without responding. If Claudia had heard about the gala, then everyone had heard. The family gossip network was faster than the internet. Another text. This one from Derek's sister, Sophie. "I can't believe what Derek did. Are you okay?" I didn't respond to that one either. Sophie was nice enough, but she was still Derek's sister. Her loyalty was to her family, not to me. At 9 o'clock I heard a car in the driveway. My whole body tensed. Derek's phone started ringing from somewhere upstairs where he'd left it charging last night. He always kept 2 phones, one for business, one personal. He'd taken his personal phone with him when he left. The business phone was here. It rang and rang. I walked upstairs and found it on his nightstand. The screen showed Veronica calling. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. Then it started ringing again. And again. And again. By the time I heard Derek's key in the front door, Veronica had called 17 times. I walked downstairs slowly. Derek stumbled and looking like he'd had a rough night. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His hair was messy. He had lipstick on his collar. When he saw me standing there, he actually looked annoyed. "You're still here?" he said. "I live here," I replied calmly. "Not for long." He pushed past me and headed for the stairs. "I need to shower and change. Then I'm going back to Veronica's." "Your phone has been ringing all morning," I said. "Veronica's been calling." He paused. "What?" She's called about 20 times in the last hour. She sounds upset. Derek's face changed. The cocky attitude disappeared, replaced by confusion. He rushed upstairs. I heard him on the phone. Baby, what's wrong? Slow down, I can't understand you. What do you mean frozen? That's impossible. No, there must be some mistake. His voice got louder, more frantic. I walked upstairs and leaned against the bedroom doorframe, watching him pace. There's no way that's true, he was saying. My family has millions? No, you don't understand, I have access to... Wait, what? That can't be right. He ended the call and stared at his phone like it had betrayed him. Then he noticed me watching. Something's wrong with Veronica's bank transfer, he said. She was trying to move some money around for an investment, and they're saying there's a problem with my account verification. Why would your account matter for her transfer? I asked innocently. Because I was going to invest with her. I told her I'd put in $500,000 to start. He was scrolling through his phone now, checking something. But that's not the weird part. I just tried to check my trust account, and it says I don't have access. There must be some computer error. Maybe it's not an error, I said quietly. He looked up at me. What's that supposed to mean? Derek, when's the last time you actually looked at the trust documents? I don't need to look at them. It's my family's trust. My grandfather set it up. When my dad died, everything transferred to us kids. He was getting agitated now. Why are you asking me this? Because you're wrong. His face went red. Wrong about what? About who controls the trust. I took a breath. Your father changed the terms 5 years ago. He made me the trustee. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. That's not funny, Naomi, Derek finally said. I'm not joking. You're lying. You're just mad about last night and you're trying to... Your father came to me 5 years ago, I interrupted. You were on one of your golf trips. He took me to lunch and told me he was worried about you. About your spending. About your attitude toward money. He said he loved you, but he didn't trust you to handle the family wealth responsibly. Derek's mouth opened but no sound came out. He made me the trustee of the entire family trust. Me. Not you. Not your mother. Not your siblings. Me. He said I was the only one who understood the value of money because I'd had to work for everything I had. I pushed off the door frame and walked closer to him. He made me promise not to tell you unless it became necessary. He hoped you'd mature, get serious about life. But you never did. You're lying, Derek whispered. But I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew I wasn't. Patricia Patterson has all the documents. I'm meeting with her Monday morning to discuss my options as trustee. I smiled at him. The same kind of smile he'd given me last night. You know what's funny? You left me for a millionaire because you wanted someone with money. But you forgot that your money isn't actually yours. It's mine to control. Derek's face went white. No. No, you can't. My mother will never allow. Your mother doesn't have a choice. Neither do you. Your father put it in writing, legally binding. I control everything. The trust fund. The business distributions. The property accounts. All of it. His phone started ringing again. Veronica. He looked at it, then at me, then back at the phone. Answer it, I said. Tell her the truth. Tell her the rich guy she left with last night is actually broke without his wife's permission to access his trust fund. Derek's hand shook as he answered the phone. Veronica, I can explain. I walked out of the room and down the stairs. Behind me, I heard him trying to make excuses, his voice desperate and pleading. It was so different from the confident tone he'd used last night. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Patricia Patterson. I heard Derek's been trying to access his accounts this morning. I thought you should know. I told him, I said. About everything. How did he take it? Not well. I could hear Derek's voice upstairs getting louder. I think reality is starting to sink in. Good. I'll see you Monday morning. We have a lot to discuss. Patricia paused. Naomi, are you sure about this? Once we start down this path, there's no going back. I thought about last night. About Derek tossing his keys at me. About Veronica's smug smile. About 8 years of marriage where I'd been taken for granted, treated like I was lucky to be with him. I'm sure, I said. Let's burn it all down. Monday morning came with rain. I drove to Patricia Patterson's office downtown, my stomach tight with nerves and excitement. I'd spent the weekend in the guest room while Derek made frantic phone calls and sent desperate texts. His mother had called me 6 times. I hadn't answered. Patricia's office was in one of those old buildings with marble floors and wood paneling. Her secretary smiled at me when I arrived and showed me straight back to Patricia's office. Patricia was in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been Derek's father's attorney for 30 years. When Richard Patterson died, everyone assumed his son would take over the family's legal affairs. But Richard had been smart. He'd known his son Derek was a spoiled child in a man's body. "Naomi," Patricia said, standing to shake my hand. "Please sit down." "Coffee?" "Yes, please." My hands were cold despite the warm building. She poured from a fancy coffee pot and handed me a cup, then sat behind her desk with a thick file folder in front of her. "Let's start at the beginning," she said. "What do you know about the Patterson Family Trust?" "Only what Richard told me 5 years ago. That he'd made me trustee, and that I had control over distributions to the family." Patricia nodded. "That's the simple version. The reality is much more comprehensive." She opened the folder. Richard Patterson was a brilliant man who loved his family but wasn't blind to their faults. When he created the trust 30 years ago, after his own father died, he built in certain protections. What kind of protections? The kind that keeps spoiled children from destroying what took 3 generations to build. Patricia pulled out a document. The Patterson Family Trust currently holds approximately $85 million in various assets. Real estate, stocks, bonds, business interests, and cash. Richards will transferred his personal assets into the trust when he died, with specific instructions about management and distribution. $85 million. The number made my head spin. The trust provides for Richard's widow, Claudia, and his 3 children Derek, Sophie, and Brandon. There are monthly distributions to cover living expenses, plus special allocations for major purchases, business investments, and emergencies. Patricia looked at me over her reading glasses. But here's the key point. The trustee has complete discretion over those distributions. Complete discretion? You decide who gets what and when. You can approve or deny any request. You can freeze accounts if you suspect misuse of funds. You can even alter the distribution schedule if you believe it's in the trust's best interest. Why would Richard give me that much power? Patricia smiled. Because he watched you and Naomi. He saw how you handled money. How you worked hard, saved carefully, made smart decisions. He saw his son spending money like it grew on trees, never working a real day in his life, treating the family business like a joke. She leaned forward. Richard came to me 6 years ago, a year before he died. He said he was dying and he needed to protect his family's future from his own children. That's harsh. But accurate. Derek has never had a real job. He shows up at the family office a few hours a week, accomplishes nothing and collects a salary. Sophie is better, she at least tries, but she's too soft. Brandon is only 24 and already has a gambling problem. Richard knew that if he left the trust in their hands, they'd burn through 3 generations of wealth in a decade. I set down my coffee cup. So he chose me. He chose you. He set it up so that you'd become trustee upon his death, but with a 5-year waiting period before the family would be informed. He wanted to see if Derek would mature, if any of them would prove capable of handling wealth responsibly. The 5 years ended 3 months ago. Why didn't you tell me 3 months ago? Because Richard's instructions were clear. Inform the trustee only if circumstances warranted it. If the family was behaving responsibly, there was no need to create conflict. Patricia's expression hardened. But Derek's behavior this past weekend certainly warrants it. I thought about the gala. About Veronica. About the humiliation. What exactly can I do as trustee? Anything that's in the trust's best interest. Let me give you some examples. Patricia pulled out several more documents. Derek receives a monthly distribution of $15,000 for living expenses. You can reduce that, increase it, or eliminate it entirely. He has access to a credit line backed by the trust for up to $200,000. You control that line. He lives in a house owned by the trust. You can revoke that arrangement. What about his mother? His siblings? Claudia receives $30,000 monthly. Sophie gets $12,000. Brandon gets $10,000. You have the same control over all of them. Patricia paused. The family business Patterson Properties is wholly owned by the trust. You, as trustee, have voting control of the company. You can make personnel decisions, including termination. The implications were staggering. I could fire Derek from the family business? You could. You could also cut off his access to company resources, the car, the expense account, the country club membership that Patterson Properties pays for. Patricia pulled out another document. Now here's where it gets interesting. I did some digging this weekend and I found something concerning. What? Derek has been borrowing money against his expected inheritance. Over the past 3 years he's taken out loans totaling nearly $2 million from various private lenders. The loans are structured as advances against his future trust distributions. I felt sick. $2 million? He's been living beyond even his generous allowance. The fancy watch collection, the trips, the cars, he's been funding a lifestyle he couldn't actually afford by borrowing against money he assumed he'd inherit. Patricia's expression was grim. The problem is, these loans violate the trust terms. Richard specifically prohibited any family member from encumbering their future distributions. It's grounds for complete disqualification from the trust. Meaning? Meaning you could legally cut Derek off entirely. No monthly distribution. No business access. Nothing. The trust would continue to provide for Claudia, Sophie, and Brandon, but Derek would be out completely. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. What happens to the debt? That's Derek's problem. He signed personal guarantees on those loans. If he can't pay them back, the lenders can come after him personally. They can't touch the trust. Richard made sure of that, but they can take everything Derek owns personally. Which is what, exactly? Patricia smiled. Almost nothing. The house is owned by the trust. The cars are leased through the company. His bank accounts are mostly empty because he spends everything he gets. If you cut him off, Derek would be personally liable for $2 million in debt with almost no assets to his name. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, rain pattered against the glass. People rushed by with umbrellas, heading to their jobs, living normal lives. I'd been one of those people once. Working hard, paying my bills, building a life through effort and sacrifice. Derek had never done that. He never had to. I want a full audit of all family distributions over the past 5 years, I said, turning back to Patricia. I want to know exactly what every family member has spent trust money on. I want to see every loan, every credit line, every expense. That's wise. And I want to freeze all distributions immediately pending the results of that audit. Patricia raised her eyebrows. All distributions? Including Claudia's? All distributions. If Derek has been breaking the rules, I need to know if anyone else has too. I walked back to the desk. How quickly can you make this happen? I can have the freeze in place by end of business today. The audit will take a few weeks. Do it. And Patricia? I met her eyes. I want you to send notification letters to every family member explaining the situation. I want them to know that I'm the trustee, that Richard chose me, and that I take my responsibilities seriously. I want them to understand that their free ride is over unless they can prove they've been responsible with trust funds. Patricia smiled. Richard would be proud of you. Maybe. Or maybe he'd think I'm being too harsh. Trust me, Naomi. Richard knew exactly what he was doing when he chose you. He knew you'd have the strength to do what needed to be done. She stood and extended her hand. Welcome to your new role as trustee of the Patterson Family Trust. This is going to get messy. I shook her hand firmly. Good. Derek likes messy. Let's give him more mess than he can handle. By Tuesday afternoon, the letters had gone out. Patricia worked fast. Each family member received a formal notification informing them that, per the terms of Richard Patterson's will, Naomi Patterson was the appointed trustee of the Patterson Family Trust, effective immediately. All distributions were frozen pending a comprehensive audit. All requests for funds would need to be submitted in writing and approved by the trustee. I was at work when my phone started blowing up. I'd taken a personal day Monday, but Tuesday I went back to my job at Morton Financial. I was a senior analyst there, specializing in wealth management and investment strategy. It was good work and I was good at it. I'd always been proud that I earned my own money, even though Derek had mocked me for it. Your little job, he'd called it. Playing with other people's money. Now I was playing with his money. And he was losing the game. My phone buzzed. Text from Derek, call me now. Another buzz. Voicemail from Claudia. Another text from Sophie, Naomi, what's going on? Mom is freaking out. I silenced my phone and focused on my work. I had a client meeting at 2. Real work. The kind of work that actually mattered. My boss, Gerald, stuck his head in my office at 1:30. You okay? You seem distracted. Just some family stuff, I said. Nothing I can't handle. Family stuff. Gerald chuckled. That's never just nothing. You need time off. No, I'm fine. Really? But I wasn't fine. I was terrified and exhilarated and angry all at once. I'd spent the past 2 days learning about the power I held, and now I was using it. Part of me felt guilty. These were Derek's family. His mother, his siblings. They hadn't humiliated me at that gala. But they'd also enabled Derek his entire life. Claudia had made excuses for her son's laziness. Sophie had laughed at his jokes about my little job. Brandon had once asked me, drunk at a Christmas party, why Derek had married someone so ordinary. They'd never respected me. None of them had. Now they would. My phone rang. Derek again. I declined the call. A text from him, "You can't do this. I'll fight you." I replied, "Try it. Patricia has all the documentation. Your father's will is ironclad. Derek, my family will never accept this. Me, they don't have a choice." I put my phone in my desk drawer and went to my client meeting. That evening, I came home to find Derek's car in the driveway. My stomach tightened, but I walked into the house with my head high. Derek was in the living room with his mother. Claudia stood up when I entered. Her face was red, her eyes puffy from crying. "How could you do this?" she demanded. "How could Richard do this?" "Hello, Claudia," I said calmly. "Would you like some tea?" "I don't want tea. I want answers. My credit cards aren't working. My bank account has been frozen. I can't even buy groceries." "That's not quite accurate," I said. "Your personal bank account hasn't been frozen. Only your access to trust distributions has been temporarily suspended pending an audit." "An audit? Why would we need an audit?" "Because Derek has been borrowing against his inheritance illegally. I need to determine if anyone else in the family has done the same thing." I set down my purse and faced them both. "If you've been following the trust rules, you have nothing to worry about." Claudia's face went from red to purple. "You have no right." "I have every right. Your husband gave me that right." I walked past them to the kitchen. "If you want to discuss this rationally, I'll make tea. If you want to yell at me, you can leave." "Mom, don't," Derek said quietly. "She's not going to listen." But Claudia wasn't done. She followed me into the kitchen, her voice shaking with rage. "Richard would never have wanted this. He loved his family. He wouldn't want you tearing us apart." "Richard loved his family enough to protect them from themselves," I said, filling the kettle. "He saw what was happening. Derek spending money he didn't earn. Brandon gambling away his allowance. Sophie buying designer clothes while her trust fund dwindles. How dare you?" "He told me, Claudia. Before he died, Richard sat me down and told me everything he was worried about. He said his biggest fear was that his children would waste 3 generations of hard work because they'd never learned the value of money." I turned to face her. "He begged me to promise I'd protect the family wealth if it ever became necessary. I promised him I would." Claudia's eyes filled with tears. "He never said anything to me. Because he knew you'd defend Derek no matter what he did. You always have. He's my son. And I was his daughter-in-law. The one Richard trusted enough to make trustee." I poured hot water over tea bags. "If you want your distributions restored, you'll cooperate with the audit. You'll provide documentation for every major purchase over the past 5 years. If you can prove you've been responsible, you'll get your money back. And if we can't prove it? Then you'll learn to live within your means like the rest of the world." Derek appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair unwashed. "Veronica won't return my calls," he said quietly. "I'm not surprised," I replied. "She was interested in your money, not you." "That's not true. She cares about me." "Derek, she dumped you the second she found out you're broke. She's already moved on." I'd actually checked Veronica's social media that morning. She'd posted pictures from a yacht party with some tech CEO. No mention of Derek anywhere. "She was using you. Just like you were using me." "I never used you," he said, but his voice was weak. "Really? So all those times you told people at parties that I was your wife, the one who keeps him grounded, that wasn't using me to look stable and mature? All those times you brought me to family functions so your parents would see you were settled down, that wasn't using me?" I handed Claudia a cup of tea. "You used me to look good, Derek. To convince everyone you were a responsible adult. Meanwhile, you were racking up millions in secret debt and cheating on me." "I wasn't cheating. You left me at a charity gala and went home with another woman. What do you call that?" Claudia set down her teacup. "Derek, is that true? You left Naomi at the gala?" "Mom, it's complicated. Did you leave your wife alone at a public event?" Derek's silence was answer enough. Claudia closed her eyes. "Oh, Derek, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking that I deserved better than this." Derek exploded. Better than this house, this life, this boring existence. Veronica understood that. She saw my potential. She was going to help me start my own business, make my own money. With what capital? I interrupted. You're 2 million in debt. What business were you going to start? Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Let me guess, I continued. You promised Veronica you'd invest trust money into her business ventures. You told her you had access to millions. You painted yourself as a wealthy entrepreneur ready to partner with her. I walked closer to him. But you're not wealthy, Derek. You're a trust fund kid who's never earned a dollar in his life. And now that trust fund is controlled by your ordinary, boring wife. Ex-wife, Derek snarled. I want a divorce. Good. So do I. I pulled papers from my purse. These are divorce documents. I'm filing tomorrow. I want nothing from you because you have nothing to give me. I'll keep my retirement accounts, my car, my personal belongings. You can have whatever's actually in your name, which is basically nothing. Derek grabbed the papers and scanned them. What about the house? The house belongs to the trust. As trustee, I'll be living here. You'll need to find somewhere else to stay. You can't kick me out of my own house. It's not your house. It never was. It's a trust property and I'm reallocating it. I looked at Claudia. You're welcome to stay in your house. Sophie and Brandon too. But Derek needs to leave. This is insane, Derek said. Mom, are you hearing this? But Claudia was looking at her son with something like disappointment. Derek, what did you spend $2 million on? That's none of your. What did you spend it on? Investments. Travel. Living my life. Derek's voice cracked. I was trying to build something, okay? I was trying to be somebody instead of just another Patterson living off the family name. By going into debt? Claudia shook her head. Your father would be so disappointed. Dad was disappointed in me my whole life, Derek said bitterly. Nothing I did was ever good enough for him. And now he's made sure I'll never have a chance to prove myself by giving everything to her. He pointed at me. She's not even family. I'm more family than you think, I said quietly. Your father trusted me with the most important thing in his life. That means something. Derek stared at me with pure hatred. Then he threw the divorce papers on the floor and stormed out. We heard the front door slam, then his car engine roaring to life. Claudia and I stood in the kitchen in silence. He's not a bad person, she finally said. He's just lost. He's 36 years old, I replied. At some point, being lost becomes a choice. What are you going to do? I'm going to finish the audit. I'm going to see exactly how deep this goes. Then I'm going to make decisions based on what's best for the trust and the family's future. I met her eyes. If you've been responsible with your money, Claudia, you'll be fine. I promise. And Derek? Derek is going to learn what it's like to live in the real world. Maybe it'll be good for him. Claudia picked up her purse. Richard always said you were special. He said you understood things his children never would. She walked to the door, then paused. He was right. I just wish it hadn't come to this. After she left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, drinking my tea, thinking about everything that had changed in just a few days. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Derek tried to access the company accounts today. I blocked him. He's furious. Be careful. I texted back. Let him be furious. It won't change anything. But that night, lying alone in the guest room, I wondered if I was doing the right thing. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about a family's entire future. Derek's mother, his siblings, they didn't deserve to suffer because of his mistakes. But they also didn't deserve to keep living off wealth they did nothing to earn while Derek dragged the family name through the mud. Tomorrow I'd start going through the financial records myself. I'd see exactly what each family member had been doing with their money. Then I'd make the hard choices that Richard Patterson had trusted me to make. Derek thought I was ordinary and boring. He thought I was someone he could throw away. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The audit results came back faster than I expected. Patricia had an entire team working on it, going through 5 years of bank statements, credit card bills, loan documents, and property records. What they found was worse than I'd imagined. Derek's $2 million in debt was just the beginning. He'd opened credit lines with 3 different banks using forged documents that claimed he had direct ownership of trust assets. He'd listed himself as the trust beneficiary with unrestricted access, which was completely false. He'd used these fake documents to secure loans at favorable rates, promising to pay them back from his inheritance. But it got worse. Derek had also been stealing from the family business. Small amounts at first, a few thousand here and there, marked as business expenses. But over time the amounts had grown. In the past year alone he'd taken nearly $300,000 from Patterson Properties through fake consulting contracts, padded expense reports, and outright theft from petty cash. I sat in Patricia's office, staring at the evidence spread across her desk. Bank statements. Forged signatures. Fake invoices. Derek hadn't just been irresponsible with money. He'd been committing fraud. "This is criminal," I said quietly. "Yes," Patricia agreed. "Wire fraud, forgery, embezzlement. If the family presses charges, Derek could go to prison." "What about the others? Sophie and Brandon? Claudia?" Patricia pulled out another file. "Sophie's clean. She spends her allowance but nothing excessive. Mostly rent, food, shopping. Normal stuff for a 28-year-old. Brandon, however." She slid papers across the desk. "Brandon has a serious gambling problem. He's been taking his monthly distribution and losing most of it at casinos. He's also borrowed about $200,000 from loan sharks. Not against the trust, he was smart enough not to do that, but he's in deep with some dangerous people." "And Claudia?" "Claudia spends money like water, but she's not breaking any rules. Clothes, jewelry, spa treatments, charity donations. She goes through her monthly allowance plus occasional requests for extra funds. But nothing illegal." I rubbed my temples. "So Derek is a criminal, Brandon is drowning in gambling debt, Sophie is fine, and Claudia is just wasteful. That about sums it up. What do we do about Derek?" Patricia leaned back in her chair. "That's your decision as trustee. You could report him to the police. You could demand he repay everything he's stolen. You could simply cut him off from the trust entirely and let him deal with the consequences. If I report him, he goes to jail. Probably. For a few years at least." I thought about Derek in prison. Part of me felt a bitter satisfaction at the image. He'd humiliated me, abandoned me, treated me like garbage. Watching him face consequences would feel good. But another part of me, the part that had loved him once, felt sick at the thought. "Give me a few days to think about it," I said finally. "In the meantime, I want to meet with Sophie and Brandon individually. I want to hear their sides of things before I make any decisions." "That's wise. And Derek?" "He's been calling the office constantly. Tell him I'll meet with him once I've spoken to his siblings. Not before." That afternoon I met Sophie at a coffee shop downtown. She arrived looking nervous, fidgeting with her bracelet as she sat across from me. "Thanks for meeting me," I said. "I didn't think I had a choice," Sophie replied. "Everyone's saying you've frozen all the family money. I froze distributions pending an audit. Now the audit's done and we need to talk about what happens next." Sophie's eyes widened. "Am I in trouble?" "No. You've been responsible with your money. I actually wanted to talk to you about increasing your distribution." "Increasing it? Why?" "Because you're the only one who's shown any sense." I pulled out a folder. "Sophie, you're 28. You have a degree in marketing. You're working part-time at a nonprofit. What do you want to do with your life?" She blinked at me. "I don't know. I've never really thought about it." "Think about it now. If money wasn't a concern, what would you do?" Sophie was quiet for a moment. "I always wanted to start my own business. Social media marketing for small nonprofits. Most of them can't afford big agencies, but they need help getting their message out. I could do that." "Then let's make it happen. I'll approve a one-time distribution of $50,000 to help you start your business. In exchange, I want you to work with a business consultant Patricia knows to create a solid business plan. If the business succeeds, great. If it fails, you learn from it. Either way, you're doing something productive." Sophie stared at me. "You're serious?" "Completely. But Sophie, I need something from you too." "What?" "The truth about Derek. How bad has it been?" Sophie looked down at her coffee. "Bad. For years. He's always been the golden child, you know? The oldest son. Dad put so much pressure on him to take over the business someday, but Derek never wanted that. He wanted to be rich and successful without doing any work. Did you know he was stealing from the company?" "I suspected. But I didn't want to know for sure." Sophie's voice was small. "I know that's cowardly. But Derek's my brother. I didn't want to believe he could do something like that. And now I think he needs help. Real help. Not just money. He needs to face what he's done." Sophie looked up at me. "Are you going to turn him in to the police?" "I don't know yet. What do you think I should do?" "I think..." Sophie took a breath. "I think he should have to pay back what he stole. Work it off somehow. But prison? That would destroy him." "He's already destroyed himself, Sophie. Prison might be the consequence he needs. Maybe. But it would also destroy Mom. She's already barely holding it together. I thought about Claudia crying in my kitchen. She'd enabled Derek his whole life, but she'd also lost her husband 3 years ago. How much more loss could she take? I'll think about it, I said finally. But Derek can't stay in that house. And he can't have access to trust funds anymore. I understand. What about Brandon? I'm meeting with him tomorrow. How bad is the gambling? Sophie's expression turned grim. Really bad. He's in debt to some scary people. They've been calling the house, making threats. Mom's terrified. Does Brandon want help? I don't know. He says he can win it back. That he just needs one good night. That's what every addict says. I finished my coffee. I'm going to offer him help. Real help. But only if he commits to treatment. If he refuses, he's on his own. That's fair, Sophie said quietly. Naomi, I'm sorry. For everything. For how Derek treated you. For how we all treated you. You weren't that bad. I wasn't that good either. I stood by and watched my brother treat you like you weren't good enough for our family. I should have said something. Sophie reached across the table and touched my hand. You deserved better. Yes, I said simply. I did. The next day, I met Brandon at a park near his apartment. He showed up late looking rough. He'd lost weight. His hands shook. He was only 24, but he looked 10 years older. You wanted to talk? He said, not meeting my eyes. I want to help you, I replied. He laughed bitterly. Right. You want to help me by cutting off my money. I want to help you by getting you into treatment for your gambling addiction. Brandon's face went red. I don't have an addiction. I just had some bad luck. Brandon, you owe $200,000 to loan sharks. That's not bad luck. That's addiction. How do you even know about that? I know everything. I'm the trustee. It's my job to know. I pulled out a brochure. There's a treatment center in California that specializes in gambling addiction. 30 days inpatient, followed by 6 months of outpatient support. I'll pay for it from the trust. All of it. When you get out, I'll work with you to create a payment plan for your debts. I'll even provide you with a small monthly allowance while you're in recovery. Brandon stared at the brochure. And if I say no? Then you're on your own. No more trust distributions. No more safety net. You'll have to figure out how to deal with those loan sharks by yourself. That's not fair. Life's not fair, Brandon. You made choices that got you here. Now you have to make a choice about how to get out. I stood up. You have 24 hours to decide. Call Patricia's office with your answer. I started to walk away, but Brandon's voice stopped me. Why are you doing this? Why do you even care? I turned back. Because your father asked me to protect this family. That includes protecting you from yourself. Even if you don't want to be protected. My father gave you everything. Your father gave me responsibility. There's a difference. I walked back to him. Brandon, I know what it's like to struggle. I grew up poor. I worked my way through college. I built my life from nothing. I know how hard it is and how easy it is to want shortcuts. But there are no shortcuts. There's just work and choices and consequences. You sound like a fortune cookie, Brandon muttered. Maybe. But I'm a fortune cookie who controls your money. I softened my voice. Please, Brandon. Take the help. You're only 24. You have your whole life ahead of you. Don't throw it away on a gambling addiction. Brandon looked at me for a long moment. Then he took the brochure. I'll think about it, he said. 24 hours, I reminded him. That evening I finally agreed to meet Derek. He came to the house, his former house, looking like a shell of himself. He'd been staying with a friend, sleeping on a couch. He hadn't shaved in days. His clothes were wrinkled. We sat in the living room, the same room where we'd celebrated Christmas, hosted dinner parties, lived our married life. Now it felt like enemy territory. You've ruined me, Derek said flatly. Are you happy? I didn't ruin you, I replied. You ruined yourself. By falling for someone else? People change, Naomi. People fall out of love. That happens. This isn't about Veronica. This is about the stealing, the fraud, the millions in illegal debt. This is about you treating your family's business like your personal piggy bank. Derek's jaw tightened. I was going to pay it all back. With what money? With a trust. Once I got my inheritance. You don't have an inheritance anymore. You violated the terms. You forged documents. You committed fraud. I leaned forward. Derek, I could send you to prison. I have all the evidence. The forged loan applications, the fake consulting contracts, the stolen company funds. Patricia says it's an open and shut case. Derek's face went white. You wouldn't. Why wouldn't I? You humiliated me in front of 100 people. You threw your car keys at me like I was your servant. You left me for a woman you barely knew because she had more money than me. I felt my voice rising but couldn't stop it. You called me ordinary. You mocked my job, my background, everything about me. Why should I show you any mercy? Because you loved me once, Derek whispered. That's not a good enough reason. Then what is? I thought about Sophie's words. About Claudia crying. About Brandon's shaking hands. About Richard Patterson trusting me to protect his family. I'm going to give you a choice, I said finally. You can face criminal charges or you can do exactly what I tell you. No arguments. No negotiations. My way or prison. Choose. What do you want? First, you sign the divorce papers. No contest. You get nothing from me, I get nothing from you. Clean break. Fine. Second, you get a real job. Not a fake position at the family company. A real job where you work 40 hours a week and earn a paycheck like everyone else. Derek's face twisted. Doing what? I don't care. Retail, food service, whatever. Something that teaches you what real work feels like. You want me to flip burgers? I want you to understand what it's like to work for minimum wage. To be tired at the end of the day. To have a boss who isn't your mother. I stood up. Third, you repay every dollar you stole from Patterson Properties. I'll work out a payment plan based on your new job salary. It'll probably take you 20 years, but you'll pay it all back. That's impossible. Those are the terms. Take them or I call the police right now. Derek put his head in his hands. I can't do this. Yes, you can. You just don't want to. I walked to the door. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Patricia will be waiting for your call. Naomi, Derek said, his voice breaking. Please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I'm sure you are. Sorry you got caught. Sorry you lost your meal ticket. Sorry your rich girlfriend dumped you. I opened the door. But are you sorry for how you treated me? For 8 years of taking me for granted? For making me feel like I wasn't good enough? Derek looked up at me with tears in his eyes. But he didn't answer. That's what I thought, I said. You have until tomorrow. Goodbye, Derek. I walked out, leaving him sitting in what used to be our living room. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. But I also felt free. Derek signed the papers. He didn't have a choice really. Prison or a job at Target. When put that way, the decision was easy. Brandon called Patricia's office and agreed to enter treatment. Sophie started working on her business plan with genuine excitement. And Claudia called me. I need to speak with you, she said. Her voice was calm, not angry. That worried me more than yelling would have. We met at her house, the large colonial where Derek had grown up. I'd been there hundreds of times over the years, holidays, birthdays, Sunday dinners. Now I walked up to the front door as an adversary instead of family. Claudia opened the door before I could knock. She looked older than she had just a week ago. Grief had added years to her face. Come in, she said quietly. We sat in her formal living room, the one that was only used for important occasions. Family photos covered the walls. Derek as a baby, his graduation, his wedding day. Our wedding day. I looked young and happy in that photo, standing next to Derek in my white dress, believing in forever. I owe you an apology, Claudia said. I turned to look at her. For what? For failing you. For failing Derek. For failing Richard. She twisted her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit I'd seen 1,000 times. Richard tried to tell me. Years ago, before he got sick. He said Derek was heading down a bad path. That we'd spoiled him, enabled him, made excuses for him. I didn't want to listen. You loved your son, I said. That's natural. I loved him so much I couldn't see what he was becoming. Claudia's eyes filled with tears. I knew about the spending. I knew he wasn't working, not really. I knew he was using the family name to live a lifestyle he couldn't afford. But I told myself he was young, he'd grow out of it, he just needed time. You couldn't have known he'd steal from the company. Couldn't I? Claudia looked at me. Richard knew. That's why he made you trustee instead of me. He knew I'd make excuses for Derek no matter what he did. He needed someone who would be objective. Someone who would do the hard thing. I'm not trying to hurt your family, Claudia. I know. You're trying to save it. She stood and walked to the fireplace where more photos sat on the mantel. Richard and I built something together. 3 generations of work. He was terrified Derek would destroy it all. So he gave it to you to protect. I wish he hadn't, I said honestly. I wish you could all just be responsible with money and I could go back to being Derek's ordinary wife with her little job. Claudia smiled sadly. You were never ordinary, Naomi. I see that now. You have strength that none of us have. The strength to do what's right even when it's hard. Derek hates me. Derek hates himself. You're just a convenient target. Claudia turned back to me. I want to help you. With the trust, with the family. I want to do what Richard would have wanted. What do you mean? I mean I'll support your decisions. I'll talk to the family, make them understand this isn't personal. I'll help Brandon through treatment. I'll encourage Sophie's business. And I'll make sure Derek follows through on his commitments. She sat back down. I know I can't undo my mistakes, but maybe I can help fix the damage. I felt something loosen in my chest. Thank you. There's something else you should know, Claudia said carefully. About Derek and Veronica. I don't want to hear. She's been calling me. Threatening legal action. I sat up straight. For what? She claims Derek defrauded her. She says he promised to invest trust money in her business, convinced her to spend money entertaining him and his contacts, and then couldn't deliver on his promises. She's talking about suing Derek for fraud and the trust for damages. That's ridiculous. The trust has nothing to do with Derek's lies. I know that. Patricia knows that. But Veronica has expensive lawyers and apparently a mean streak. Claudia handed me a letter. This came yesterday. I read it quickly. Veronica was demanding $200,000 in compensation for financial damages and emotional distress caused by Derek's fraudulent claims about his wealth. If the trust didn't pay, she'd file a lawsuit. This is blackmail, I said. Yes. But it's also a potential scandal. If she goes public with her claims, the whole story comes out. Derek's fraud, the family issues, everything. It could damage the Patterson name and the business. I thought about it. $200,000 was a lot of money, but the trust could afford it. It would be easier to just pay her off and make her go away. But it would also be wrong. No, I said, handing the letter back. We're not paying her a dime. But the scandal. Let there be a scandal. Let the truth come out. I stood up. Veronica is a grown woman who chose to get involved with a married man. She didn't do her due diligence on his finances before trying to get into business with him. That's on her. She can sue Derek if she wants, but she's not getting trust money. She'll drag the family through the mud. Then we'll survive it. The truth is that Derek lied to her just like he lied to everyone else. That's not the trust's problem. I walked to the door. Have Patricia send Veronica a letter declining her demands. Make it clear that any lawsuit will be vigorously defended and will result in counterclaims for extortion. Claudia stood up. Naomi, are you sure? I'm sure. We're done paying for Derek's mistakes. I opened the door, then paused. And Claudia? Thank you. For the apology. For the support. It means more than you know. It's the least I can do. Claudia smiled. Richard would be proud of you. I know I am. That night, I sat in my home office going through paperwork. Divorce documents, trust reports, business filings. My life had become a mountain of legal forms and financial statements. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Brandon checked into treatment today. He was scared but ready. Thank you for giving him this chance. Another text, this one from an unknown number. This is Veronica Ashford. We need to talk. Call me. I deleted it. Then my phone rang. Not a text this time, an actual call. From Derek. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. What? I said. Veronica called me, Derek said. She's threatening to sue me for fraud. I know. She sent your mother a demand letter. You have to help me, Naomi. If she sues, I'll lose everything. I can't fight a lawsuit with no money, no lawyer. You should have thought of that before you lied to her about being rich. Please. I'm begging you. Just pay her the $200,000. It's nothing to the trust. It's not happening, Derek. She'll ruin me. You ruined yourself. I'm just not cleaning up the mess. I felt surprisingly calm. Derek, you lied to Veronica. You pretended to be something you're not. You promised her things you couldn't deliver. Those are your consequences, not mine. But I'm still your husband. Not for long. The divorce will be final in 3 months. Naomi, please. I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong. But I'm drowning here. I'm working at Target, living in a friend's basement, trying to figure out how to pay back millions of dollars. Now Veronica wants to take what little I have left. Don't let her do this. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Get a lawyer, Derek. Fight your own battles. I'm done fighting them for you. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I sent it to voicemail. A text from Derek, "You're heartless." I replied, "I'm learning from the best." The next few weeks were chaos. Veronica did file her lawsuit, and the media picked up the story. "Tech millionaire sues local man for fraud," was the headline. Derek's name was dragged through the papers. The Patterson family business faced questions. Claudia had to release a statement clarifying that Derek had acted alone and was no longer involved with Patterson Properties. Sophie launched her business. Brandon sent letters from treatment saying he was making progress. Claudia stood by my decisions publicly, even when it was hard. And Derek worked at Target, ringing up customers and learning what real work felt like. Through it all, I kept my head down and did my job. Both at Morton Financial and as trustee. I reviewed every trust expense. I met with the family business managers. I made smart investments and tough decisions. Patricia called me one afternoon with news. Veronica's lawyers want to settle. They're asking for $50,000 instead of $200,000. Tell them no, I said. Naomi, at some point fighting costs more than settling. I don't care. She's not getting a dime from Derek or the trust. If she wants to waste her money on lawyers, that's her choice. You're sure? Completely sure. 2 days later, Veronica dropped the lawsuit. Patricia called with the news, sounding surprised. Why? I asked. Her lawyers probably told her she had no case. Derek might have lied, but she chose to believe him without doing any verification. No judge would award her damages for her own due diligence failure. So it was all a bluff. A very expensive bluff. She paid her lawyers about $30,000 for nothing. I smiled. Good. Naomi, can I ask you something? Sure. How do you feel about all this? Really? I thought about it. I feel free, I said finally. For 8 years I tried to be the wife Derek wanted. The quiet, supportive woman who didn't complain about his laziness or his spending or his disrespect. I made myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I looked out my office window at the city below. Now I'm done making myself small. I'm done apologizing for being competent and smart and capable. Derek called me ordinary, but you know what? There's nothing ordinary about standing up for yourself. No, Patricia agreed. There isn't. I don't hate him anymore, I continued. I don't love him either. I just don't care. He's facing consequences for his actions. That's not my revenge. That's just justice. Richard would be proud. Maybe. Or maybe he'd think I'm too harsh. Trust me, Naomi. Richard knew exactly what he was doing when he chose you. You're exactly what this family needed. After we hung up, I sat in my office for a while, thinking about everything that had changed. 2 months ago, I was Derek's ordinary wife with her little job. Now I controlled $85 million and was rebuilding a family that had almost destroyed itself. It wasn't revenge I felt anymore. It was purpose. Derek had thrown his car keys at me and told me to find my own way home. So I had. And the way I'd found was better than anything he'd ever offered me. The Patterson family Sunday dinners had been a tradition for decades. Every week, the family gathered at Claudia's house for pot roast, gossip, and forced togetherness. I'd attended hundreds of them over the years, always feeling slightly like an outsider. This Sunday was different. I was hosting. At my house. The one I now lived in alone. The one that used to be Derek's house but was actually always owned by the trust. Sophie arrived first, bringing flowers and a nervous smile. Is this weird? She asked. Having family dinner without Derek? Derek was invited, I said, taking the flowers. He declined. Of course he did. Sophie followed me into the kitchen. How's he doing? Working. Paying his debts. Learning to live like a normal person. I pulled a roast from the oven. He'll survive. Brandon arrived next, fresh out of treatment. He looked healthier, clear-eyed, more weight on his frame. He hugged me awkwardly. Thanks for dinner, he said. And for, everything else. How are you doing? One day at a time, like they say. He managed to smile. I got a job at a recreation center. Teaching basketball to kids. It doesn't pay much, but I like it. That's great, Brandon. Yeah. Turns out I'm good at something other than losing money. He looked around. This is strange being here without Derek. He's still your brother, I said. You can have a relationship with him that's separate from what happened between us. I know, but it's hard. He made choices that hurt all of us. Brandon sat at the kitchen counter. I'm angry at him. For stealing, for lying, for making Mom cry. But I also feel bad for him, He's my brother and he's suffering. Those things can both be true, I said gently. Claudia arrived last, carrying her famous apple pie. She kissed my cheek like she always had, but there was a new respect in her eyes. We sat down to dinner, the four of us, and it was strange but not uncomfortable. We talked about Sophie's business plans. About Brandon's new job. About the trust and the family company and plans for the future. I've been thinking about Patterson Properties, Claudia said as we ate. The company needs new leadership. Someone younger, more dynamic. Derek always said he'd run it someday, Sophie said quietly. Derek said a lot of things. Claudia's voice was firm. But saying and doing are different. The company needs someone who will actually work, who understands business, who cares about more than just their own comfort. What are you suggesting? I asked. Claudia looked at me. I'm suggesting you consider taking a more active role. You have a business degree. You work in finance. You understand wealth management better than any of us. I have a full-time job. You have a full-time job that pays what, $80,000 a year? As trustee and president of Patterson Properties, you could make 3 times that while doing something that matters more. I set down my fork. You want me to run the family business? I want you to save it. Patterson Properties has been coasting for years. We need fresh thinking, new strategies. Derek never cared about it. He just showed up to collect his paycheck. You actually would care. What about Sophie? Or Brandon? I'm not ready for that, Sophie said quickly. I want to build my own thing first. Maybe someday, but not now. And I know nothing about real estate, Brandon added. But you do, Naomi. You analyze property investments at your job all the time. I looked at the 3 of them. This is a big decision. Sleep on it, Claudia said. But think about it seriously. Richard trusted you with everything. Maybe it's time to step fully into that trust. After dinner, as we were cleaning up, my phone rang. Derek. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. You're having family dinner without me. His voice was bitter. You were invited. Right. To the house that used to be mine, with the family that used to be mine, to celebrate how well everything is going now that I'm gone. Derek, did Brandon tell you about treatment? How I paid for it? How I'm such a terrible person who needed saving? Brandon told me he's doing well. That's what matters. What matters is that you've turned my family against me. I didn't turn anyone against you. You did that yourself. I walked into the living room away from the others. Derek, your family loves you. But they can't enable your behavior anymore. There's a difference. They chose you over me. They didn't choose anyone. They're just finally holding you accountable. I sat down on the couch. Derek, you can still fix this. You can still rebuild your relationships with them. But you have to actually change, not just be angry that you got caught. I'm changing. I'm working at Target, paying my debts, living in a basement. Those are consequences, not changes. Change is internal. It's about who you are, not just what you're doing because you have no other choice. You sound like a therapist. Maybe you need one. There was a long silence. Then Derek said, Veronica called me today. My stomach tightened. What did she want? To gloat. To tell me she's moved on with some CEO who's actually rich. To laugh about how stupid I was. His voice cracked. She said I was the worst mistake she ever made. I'm sorry, I said and meant it. Are you? You're the one who refused to pay her off. Paying her off wouldn't have changed anything, Derek. She still would have moved on. She was never interested in you, just your money. When the money disappeared, so did she. I paused. I did you a favor, actually. Better to know now what kind of person she is. You didn't do it as a favor. You did it as revenge. Maybe both things are true. Derek laughed bitterly. You've changed, Naomi. The woman I married would never have been this cold. The woman you married let you walk all over her. I'm not that woman anymore. I stood up. Derek, I have to go. My guests are leaving. Your guests, your house, your family, your life. His voice was heavy with pain. You took everything from me. No, I said firmly. You threw everything away. There's a difference. Good night, Derek. I hung up and stood there for a moment, my hands shaking slightly. I'd meant what I said. I didn't hate Derek anymore. But talking to him still hurt. Still stirred up memories of the woman I used to be, the one who loved him and believed in forever. That woman was gone. I'd mourned her and moved on. Everything okay? Sophie asked from the doorway. Derek called. Is he okay? He's angry and hurt and blaming everyone but himself. So typical Derek. I managed to smile. He'll be fine eventually. Or he won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. Sophie hugged me. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I'm just tired of being weak. After everyone left, I sat in my quiet house and thought about Claudia's offer. Running Patterson Properties would be a huge change. More responsibility, more pressure, more visibility. But it would also be mine. My choices, my vision, my success or failure. Derek had always said I worked a little job at a little company doing little things that didn't matter. Maybe it was time to prove just how little I actually was. I pulled out my laptop and started researching Patterson Properties' financials, operations and market position. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. By midnight, I'd made my decision. I'd give my notice at Morton Financial. I'd take over Patterson Properties. I'd build something that Richard Patterson would be proud of. And Derek would have to watch me succeed in the role he'd always assumed would be his. That wasn't revenge. That was just poetic justice. I gave my notice at Morton Financial on a Monday morning. Gerald, my boss, looked genuinely sad. I hate to lose you, he said. You're one of our best analysts. I appreciate that. But I have an opportunity one can't pass up. Patterson Properties? I heard some rumors. It's official now. I'm taking over as president. Gerald whistled. That's quite a step up. From analyzing wealth to managing it. Terrifying, honestly. But also exciting. You'll do great. He shook my hand. And if you ever need advice, call me. Though something tells me you won't need it. I started at Patterson Properties the following Monday. The office was in a downtown high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows and that new building smell. I'd been here a few times over the years, meeting Derek for lunch or attending company parties. But I'd always been the wife, the outsider, the woman who worked at a little finance job. Now I was the boss. The staff gathered in the main conference room for my introduction. About 30 people, property managers, leasing agents, accountants, administrative staff. They looked nervous. Change was always scary and I was definitely a change. Good morning, I said, standing at the head of the conference table. Most of you know me as Derek Patterson's wife. Now you'll know me as your president. I know that's an unusual transition, and I know some of you might have questions about my qualifications. A few awkward glances around the room. Fair enough. Here are my qualifications. I have a business degree with a focus on finance. I've worked in wealth management and investment analysis for 10 years. I know property valuation, market analysis, and portfolio management. I also know that Patterson Properties has been underperforming for years, coasting on its reputation instead of adapting to market changes. That got their attention. I've reviewed 5 years of financial statements. Our profit margins are shrinking. Our properties need updates. Our leasing rates are below market average. We're losing ground to competitors who are more aggressive and more innovative. I looked around the room. That ends now. What's your plan? Asked Robert Chin, the chief financial officer. First, a complete operational audit. I want to know every detail about every property we own. Condition, occupancy rate, maintenance costs, revenue, everything. Second, I'm bringing in consultants to evaluate our market position and recommend improvements. Third, we're going to start acting like a business instead of a family piggy bank. What does that mean? Asked Jennifer Ross, the head of leasing. It means no more nepotism. No more fake jobs for family members who don't work. No more padding expenses or fudging numbers. We're going to run this company professionally or we're going to sell it. I softened my tone. I know that sounds harsh. But Patterson Properties was built by people who worked hard and made smart decisions. We owe it to them to do the same. What about Derek? Someone asked from the back. What about him? Is he coming back? No. Derek is no longer employed by Patterson Properties. He won't be returning. I paused. Anyone else have questions? Robert raised his hand. What happens if we can't turn things around? Then we make hard choices. Sell underperforming properties. Restructure. Possibly sell the whole company. I met his eyes. But I don't plan on failing. I plan on making Patterson Properties the best real estate company in the city. Anyone who wants to be part of that, I want you on my team. Anyone who wants to coast along doing the minimum, there's the door. Nobody moved. Good. Let's get to work. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the business. I visited every property we own, 32 buildings across the city, from apartment complexes to office towers to retail spaces. I met with tenants, reviewed contracts, identified problems. Most of the properties were in decent shape but outdated. They needed improvements, updates, better management. I found more evidence of Derek's theft too. Fake consulting contracts, padded invoices, mysterious cash withdrawals. He'd been treating the company like his personal checking account for years. How much total? I asked Robert one afternoon as we reviewed the forensic audit. About 700,000 over 3 years, he said. That we can prove. Could be more. Jesus. I rubbed my temples. How did nobody notice? We noticed. But Derek was the owner's son. Who were we going to report it to? Robert looked uncomfortable. I tried to tell Richard once about 2 years before he died. He said he'd handle it. I guess he did by making you trustee. Did Derek know you knew? I don't think so. I was careful. But others knew too. It was an open secret. Who else? Robert named 3 people. All long-term employees. All loyal to the Patterson family. Get them in my office, I said. I want to hear their stories. Over the next few days, I interviewed everyone who'd known about Derek stealing. Each conversation was painful. They'd all seen what was happening. They'd all felt powerless to stop it. Some had tried to bring it up with Claudia, who'd made excuses. Others had gone to Derek directly, who'd laughed it off or threatened their jobs. I should have done more, Jennifer Ross said, close to tears. But I have 3 kids and a mortgage. I couldn't risk losing my job. I understand, I told her. You're not responsible for Derek's choices. But part of me was angry. Angry that so many people had known and said nothing. Angry that the family business had been looted for years while everyone looked the other way. I called a meeting with Claudia, Sophie, and Brandon. I found more theft, I told them. $700,000 that we can prove. There might be more. Claudia closed her eyes. What do you want to do? I want to add it to Derek's repayment plan. He owes the trust $2 million. Now he owes Patterson Properties $700,000. That's $2.7 million total. He'll never be able to pay that back, Sophie said. Probably not. But he's going to try. I pulled out a contract. I've talked to Patricia. We can structure it so Derek pays a percentage of any income he makes for the next 20 years. If he gets a better job, he pays more. If he stays at Target, he pays less. But he pays. That's his whole life, Brandon said quietly. He stole money his whole adult life. Seems fair. I looked at each of them. But I need family approval for this. The trust is mine to control, but the family business affects all of you. If you want to forgive the debt, say so now. Nobody spoke. All right then. I'll have Patricia draw up the paperwork. That night, Derek called me. You're billing me for the company theft too? Yes. That's over $2 million, Naomi. I'll be paying until I'm 60. Then you'll be paying until you're 60. This is insane. You can't do this. I can and I am. You stole from the family business. You stole from the trust. You committed fraud. You're lucky I'm not pressing criminal charges. I kept my voice calm. Derek, you made choices. Now you face consequences. That's how the real world works. The real world. He laughed bitterly. You mean your world? Where you get to play judge and jury over my life. I'm not judging you. A judge would send you to prison. I'm giving you a chance to make things right. I paused. Derek, you can still turn this around. Work hard, build a real career, prove you're more than a trust fund kid who stole from his family. Or you can stay angry and bitter and blame everyone else. Your choice. Some choice. It's more of a choice than you gave me when you threw your car keys at me and left me at that gala. Silence. I regret that, Derek finally said. Every day I regret that night. Good. Learn from it. I softened my voice slightly. Derek, I don't hate you. I just refuse to enable you anymore. If you ever truly change, not just go through the motions, but actually become a better person, I'll be happy for you. But until then, this is how things are. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about it. I don't know. Ask me in 20 years. After we hung up, I sat in my home office surrounded by paperwork and contracts and spreadsheets. My new life. My new purpose. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Saw the new property upgrades plan. Looks great. Proud of you. Another text from Brandon. 90 days sober. Thanks for believing in me. An email from Claudia. Board meeting next week. You're doing a wonderful job. Richard would be so proud. I smiled. Maybe I hadn't just saved the Patterson family. Maybe I'd saved myself too. 6 months after taking over Patterson Properties, I presented my first quarterly report to the board. Profit margins were up 12%. Occupancy rates had increased across all properties. We'd completed renovations on 3 buildings and had plans for 4 more. The company was thriving. Claudia beamed from her seat. Excellent work, Naomi. The other board members nodded in agreement. They were mostly family friends and business associates of Richard's people who'd watched the company struggle for years under complacent leadership. Now they were seeing real results. "I'd like to propose a bonus structure for employees," I said. "Performance-based incentives for the property managers who exceed their targets. Nothing huge, but enough to motivate excellence." "Approved," said Thomas Wu, one of the senior board members. "It's about time we rewarded the people doing actual work." After the meeting, Claudia pulled me aside. "You've exceeded every expectation. Thank you for taking this on. Thank you for trusting me with it. I should have trusted you years ago. We all should have." Claudia squeezed my hand. "I got a call from Derek yesterday. He's asking for a reduction in his payment plan. He says it's too much, that he can barely afford rent and food." "What did you tell him?" "That he should talk to you." "But Naomi, I have to ask, is there any flexibility there? He is still my son." I'd been expecting this conversation. Derek currently pays 20% of his income toward his debt. That leaves him with about $1,600 a month after payments. It's tight, but it's manageable. That's more than a lot of people live on. "I know, but Claudia, if I reduce his payments now, what's his incentive to get a better job? To improve his situation? He needs to feel the consequences of his choices, or he'll never change." "You're probably right." Claudia sighed. "It's just hard watching your child struggle." "I understand. But you're not helping him by making things easy. You're helping him by letting him learn and grow." I paused. "Besides, Derek isn't struggling. He's just not comfortable. There's a difference." "When did you get so wise?" "When I had to be." The divorce was finalized that week. 8 years of marriage, ended with a signature on legal documents. I sat in Patricia's office as she walked me through the paperwork. "You're officially single," she said. "How does it feel?" "Like closing a book I should have closed years ago." I signed the last form. "Is Derek coming in to sign?" "He already did. This morning." He looked. Patricia paused. "Older. Tired. But also somehow more real, if that makes sense." "It does." I gathered my copies of the paperwork. "Did he say anything?" "He asked if you were happy. I told him that wasn't my business to share." Patricia smiled. "But for what it's worth, you seem happy. Happier than I've seen you in years." She was right. I was happy. Not in a giddy, excited way, but in a deep, settled way. I liked my work. I liked my life. I liked who I was becoming. I ran into Derek a few days later at a coffee shop downtown. He was wearing his Target uniform on a break between shifts. We both froze when we saw each other. "Hi," he said. "Hi. Can I buy you a coffee? I mean, I can't really afford it, but..." He gave a self-deprecating laugh. "Old habits. I'll buy my own coffee. But we can sit together if you want." We settled at a small table by the window. Derek looked different, thinner, less polished, more worn down. But also, somehow, more genuine. "You look good," he said. "Professional. Successful." "Thank you. You look different." "Broke? Humiliated?" "Yeah." He stirred his coffee. "I heard the company is doing well. That you're actually making it work." "We're making progress." "Of course you are. You're actually competent." He said it without bitterness, which surprised me. "I never appreciated that about you. How smart you were. How capable." "No, you didn't. I took you for granted. Treated you like you were lucky to be with me, when really it was the other way around." Derek looked at me directly. "I'm sorry, Naomi. For everything. For how I treated you, for the gala, for Veronica, for all of it. I was an ass." "Yes, you were. I blamed you for a long time. For taking away the trust, for forcing me to get a real job, for making me face consequences. But my therapist says..." "You're seeing a therapist?" "Court-ordered. Part of my payment plan arrangement. Apparently, I have to work on myself as well as work at Target." He smiled slightly. "Turns out I've got some issues. Entitlement. Narcissism. Arrested development. Fun stuff like that." "That's good. That you're addressing it." "Yeah. It sucks, but it's good." Derek sipped his coffee. "The therapist made me write a list of everyone I'd hurt and how. Your name was at the top of the list. 4 years and years of taking you for granted, making you feel small, treating you like you were ordinary when you were extraordinary." I felt my throat tighten. "Derek, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how terrible I was. How much I threw away." He looked out the window. "Veronica texted me last week. She's engaged to some tech guy. She wanted to rub it in, I think. But all I felt was relieved. She was using me and I was using her. Neither of us cared about the other person at all. That's a hard realization. Yeah. Turns out I've never really loved anyone. Not even myself. He turned back to me. But I think I loved you once. Before I got so wrapped up in being important and rich and special. I think there was a time when I actually loved you. I think so too, I said quietly. For what it's worth, I'm glad you got out. I'm glad you didn't waste any more of your life on me. Derek stood up. I have to get back to work. But Naomi? Thank you. For being strong enough to do what needed to be done. I hated you for it, but it saved my life. He walked out before I could respond. I sat there for a long time, processing the conversation. Derek had apologized. Really, genuinely apologized. And somehow that gave me closure I didn't know I needed. Brandon graduated from his outpatient program that month. I attended the ceremony with Sophie and Claudia. Brandon received a chip for 6 months of sobriety and gave a speech about second chances and family support. I was drowning, he said to the room full of recovering addicts and their families. I'd lost everything to gambling. Money, respect, trust. My family could have written me off. But they didn't. They gave me a chance to get clean and build a real life. I'm not going to waste it. After the ceremony, he hugged me tight. I know I haven't said it enough, but thank you. For the tough love. For believing I could change. You did the work, I told him. I just opened the door. Still, you could have given up on me. You didn't. Sophie's business was taking off too. She'd signed 5 nonprofit clients and was building a reputation for affordable, effective social media marketing. She was making her own money, building her own success, finding her own purpose. I never thought I could do this, she told me over lunch one day. I always assumed I'd just live off the trust forever like Derek did. But this is better. Knowing I earned it myself. You're doing great work, I said. Your father would be proud. I think he is. Wherever he is. Sophie smiled. He knew what he was doing when he picked you. You saved us, Naomi. All of us. I just held people accountable. You all did the saving yourselves. But as I drove home that evening, I thought about Richard Patterson. About his trust in me. About his hope that someone could guide his family towards something better than entitlement and waste. I'd like to think I'd lived up to that trust. The family was healing. The business was thriving. Derek was learning. Brandon was sober. Sophie was building something real. And me? I was finally becoming the person I was always meant to be. Not Derek's ordinary wife. Not the girl from the South Side trying to fit into a rich family. Just me. Naomi. Capable, strong, successful on my own terms. Derek had thrown his car keys at me and told me to find my own way home. So I had. And the way I'd found was better than any path he could have shown me. 1 year after the gala, I attended another charity event. This one was different. It was at Patterson Properties' newly renovated flagship building, and I was hosting. Not as someone's wife, but as the company president. The ballroom sparkled with the same kind of wealth and glamour as that awful night at the Crystal Grand. But this time, I wasn't the quiet wife standing in the background. I was center stage, giving a speech about Patterson Properties' commitment to affordable housing initiatives. For too long, real estate development has focused only on profit, I told the crowd of business leaders and city officials. But Patterson Properties is committed to building communities, not just buildings. We're announcing tonight a partnership with 3 local nonprofits to create 200 units of affordable housing over the next 3 years. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. After the speech, people lined up to talk to me, congratulating me, asking questions, treating me with respect. I saw Claudia in the crowd, beaming with pride. Sophie was there too, filming the event for the company's social media. Brandon stood near the bar, drinking sparkling water and chatting with some of the younger guests. Beautiful event, said a woman I didn't recognize. I'm Diane Foster with the City Planning Commission. We'd love to discuss partnership opportunities. I'd be happy to meet, I said, handing her my business card. My own business card with my own title. You're Derek Patterson's ex-wife, right? Diane asked. I'm Naomi Ford, I said, using my maiden name. I'd legally changed it back after the divorce. Derek is my ex-husband, but I prefer to be known for what I've accomplished, not for who I was married to. Diane smiled. Fair enough. And what you've accomplished is impressive. This company was stagnant for years. You've turned it around in 12 months. I had good people to work with, and a strong foundation to build on. Still, it takes vision to execute this kind of transformation. I look forward to working with you. After she walked away, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. This was mine. This success, this respect, this moment. I'd built it through hard work, smart decisions, and refusing to accept other people's limitations on what I could achieve. Naomi? A voice behind me. I turned to find Derek standing there, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. I was surprised I hadn't invited him. Derek, what are you doing here? Sophie got me a ticket. Said I should see what you've built. He looked around the elegant ballroom. This is incredible. The building, the event, all of it. Thank you. I'm not here to cause problems. I just wanted to see for myself. He shoved his hands in his pockets. My therapist says part of recovery is acknowledging reality. This is reality. You're successful, you're happy, and you did it without me. You did it despite me. Derek, let me finish. He took a breath. I spent this past year being angry. At you, at the world, at myself. But lately I've started to feel something else. Grateful. Grateful? That you stopped me. If you just kept enabling me, kept looking the other way while I stole and lied and destroyed everything, I'd be in prison now. Or dead. Or just empty. He looked at me directly. You forcing me to face consequences saved my life. Even though I hated you for it. I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted you to take responsibility. I know that now. Derek glanced around. I should go. I just wanted you to know I see what you've done. For me, for Brandon, for the company. You were the hero of this story and I was the villain. I accept that. You're not a villain, Derek. You were just lost. Maybe. But you helped me find my way. Even if your method was brutal. He smiled slightly. Enjoy your success, Naomi. You earned it. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry I ever called you ordinary. You're the most extraordinary person I've ever known. He walked away before I could respond, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there for a moment, processing the encounter. Derek had changed. Really changed. Maybe not completely, maybe not perfectly, but genuinely. The entitled, selfish man I'd married was becoming someone more real, more humble, more human. I was happy for him. But I was happier for me. Everything okay? Sophie appeared at my elbow. Everything's fine. Derek was here. I know. I invited him. I hope that was okay. It was. He's different. He's working 2 jobs now. Target and tutoring high school kids in business classes. He's actually good at it, teaching. Who knew? Sophie smiled. He'll never be rich or powerful. But maybe he'll be happy. That's more than he was before. Maybe that's what he needed all along. The rest of the evening was a blur of conversations and handshakes and networking. I met potential investors, discussed future projects, and solidified Patterson Properties' reputation as a company with vision and integrity. At the end of the night, as the last guests were leaving, I stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights twinkled below, each one representing lives and stories and dreams. A year ago, I'd stood in a different ballroom, humiliated and heartbroken, watching my marriage end. Now I stood here, successful and confident, having built something real. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Saw the event coverage. Richard would be so proud of you. Another text from my mother. Saw you on the news, baby. My daughter, the CEO. So proud. And a third text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Jennifer Ross from work. Just wanted to say thank you for being the leader Patterson Properties needed. You inspire us all. I smiled and put my phone away. Tomorrow there would be more work. More challenges. More decisions to make and problems to solve. Running a company wasn't easy. Being a trustee wasn't simple. I'd have setbacks and struggles and moments of doubt. But tonight I let myself enjoy the victory. I'd taken control of my life. I'd faced down a family's dysfunction and my own fear. I'd proven that ordinary people who work hard and make smart choices and refuse to be diminished can accomplish extraordinary things. Derek had wanted me to find my own way home that night at the gala. Instead, I'd found my way forward. To a life that was bigger and better than anything I'd imagined when I was just trying to be a good wife to a bad husband. I wasn't Derek Patterson's ex-wife anymore. I wasn't just a trustee or a CEO or any single role. I was Naomi Ford. And I was exactly where I was meant to be. The city sparkled below me, full of possibility. I took a deep breath of cool night air and smiled. This was just the beginning.